have a very special guest joining us, Alexandre Grenier. Alexandre is the CEO of Pointlaz. After graduating in mining engineering, Alexandre worked at Windsor Salt Mines, where he was involved in shaft projects. Since then, Alexandre has also been a CTO in a mining technology company and worked as an innovation project leader at Agnico Eagle. Alexandre has a strong programming background and thrives on new technologies in the mining industry such as drones, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and robot mapping and localization. Thanks again for joining us on The Rocks. Let's dive in. So, Alex, great to have you here today on The Rocks. What are you drinking today?
Today I'm drinking a Marital Sour. It's a Quebec liquor. It's called Averill, and it has that maple twist.
Well, I have to admit, I'm wussing out today, and I'm having an iced coffee because I was up really early this morning, and I was worried if I had a cocktail, I might fall asleep as I was heading home. But it's great to have you on here, and cheers to having you on to talk about mining technology.
Yeah, cheers.
How did you find your way into focusing so much on mining technology from your background?
I've been always interested in programming technologies. One of the main reasons why I got into technologies was part of programming I learned myself. So when I was on a mine, and we were really busy, and I was kind of lazy. I didn't want to do repeated tasks. So I kind of taught myself how to program. And that's really where it really expanded a lot of things on the technology side of things. And then I quit this job, and I changed for a startup that was in technology. And that's really where it opened my eyes on all the VR, LiDAR, AR, drones, and all this fancy stuff that is going into the mining field, underground most likely, but also above ground. So that's how I got into that. And just recently, I started on myself to really focus on my own technology for the mines.
Yeah, I find a lot of parallels because the reason I started Prospector was so I never had to go on CDAR ever again.
It's awful to search on that engine.
And it just, again, to save time, right? I think that's a great thing as an innovator. If you always assume that you're never going to be the smartest person in the room and the only person with that same problem. So if you can come up with something that enough people find irritating or takes them a lot of time, maybe that's something worth taking a look at.
I can add something also to that. On the mining side of things and the operation side of things, the ROI is super important for the mines. So if you bring up an innovation, you often need to have something that backs it, except if it comes really from the area management and they really want to push it to the mines. But actually, this won't really work as the operation won't accept it and they won't push for it. So you really got to have an innovation that can help on the ROI for the mines and help on also the safety and environment part of the mines. Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm really impressed by your Pointlaz solution, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that. But it dramatically reduces downtime in shaft scans, right? Which has a direct impact on the amount of money a mine can make.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was on the other company, one of the things we had problems is it was a revolution. You had beautiful mines scanned in 3D. Just the wow effect was great, but we could never really have the argument of saying, well, get that technology and you're going to save that. You're going to get more safety and you get more ROI on your investment. And that's really where I thought to myself, is there a place in a mine that this could really help? And that's where I figure out that most of the mine bottlenecks when they're on the ground, when they want to hoist ore, copper, silver, whatever, gold, is the shaft. You cannot make a bigger shaft. You cannot hoist more than you could at the moment. So how can you increase your production? Well, you can accelerate the skip that is going up and down, but this not often, all the time you can do that because of the technicalities and the safety. But I figured out that there was a moment in each week, there's about 6 or 8 hours that were lost each week for the inspections. And that's not all. It's everywhere in the world. There's underground mine shafts. There's weekly inspections. So that's where I figure out, well, what if we could shrink down that 8 hour to 1 hour and save 8 hours of hoisting for the mines each week and bring it to a year, 2 years, 10 years. That's a lot of tons that we're planning on making the mines save and produce more.
And how did you decide, because you were working a different job at the time, to kind of take that leap and start Pointless? I mean, that's a pretty big jump to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur in my blood. I just needed to have the right opportunity. When this clicked in my head, I was like, that's the way to go. And I've got the knowledge, I've got the connections, and I can build my own stuff. And also had two partners that I met that were ready to move on with me, which was was also important for us to have the team behind that. So we had good, strong team. So that's where I jumped and I said, well, let's do it. And now here we are.
And how are you finding it so far?
I finding it's a lot of work, but I just love it. I never thought it would have gone so good and so fast, because when I was in other companies, I was knocking on doors, always saying no, and now I'm knocking on doors and they're opening and saying yes. Well, let's do it. Let's buy it. I'm kind of surprised to see how people are engaging and they want to work with us. So that's good.
Do you think then the industry is more open to innovation on the operations side because they can really see the immediate benefit from an ROI perspective versus like exploration or even, on the investment side?
Yes, they're really open. But I worked also as a consultant in a big mining company, and you've received tons and tons and tons of emails of new technologies that's supposed to help your mine, and how do they manage to sell to that mine and really get started. So one of the things is that the mine needs to do a list of the important things as they see. And if you fit in that list for that particular mine, and they're ready to push and put the effort and also the resources to push the technology, well, probably is going to go good for you. But if the mine, even if you have the best technologies out there, if the mine, they're not ready in their head, or they don't have the resource to put all the links and everything and put how do you say that? The infrastructure behind importing that technology, if they're not ready to do that, well, you're going to have a hard time to get into the technology. So you just need to have the right timing and the right mentality of the mine.
Yeah, because any technology, including yours, has to integrate in different ways with the existing technology and infrastructure they have there at the mine, right?
Yeah. And if it's too big and it's going to change your whole mine, people are just going to go, okay, calm down. That's too much. We don't want to take all the resources to, for example, change the whole SAP structure or Oracle database. And if it's miraculous what you have, they're not going to be willing. So you just take baby steps and get into the chain, know people. And then that's how, as soon as it's going to get going, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And that's how you can deploy your technology throughout the mine company.
Have you seen any resistance to being a new company and a relatively young person in the industry? I mean, I think you would probably consider yourself a young innovator and entrepreneur. Have you had any issues on that side?
My goal is really to give good results, make a good name of the company. And I think we have the team for that. So on that particular part, I think that's not too much, but they know it's an innovative company. So they know that there's a risk associated to that. I'm not lying to them. And they know it. And they can actually, where I operate mostly in Quebec for now, there's lots of R&D resources that get back to them also. So which is kind of also good for them. For now, it has been good because there was a need. What I see in the future is I want to replace the weekly shaft scans. And it's going to take time for the mines to accept my data as a safe data and to trust it. Not only for the mines, the general manager, the engineering, the VP, but also the miners. If it's unionized, it's even going to be worse, because that means you got to that's a job of a person that you're going to have to remove. So I think there's going to be resistance, and I'm presuming it's going to take about 3 years to really get that going, but I have the trust, and then I think it's going to be the way to go in the future.
No, I asked that question to encourage other people that maybe are new to the industry or coming out of school, if they're thinking about innovative products or becoming an entrepreneur, just for them to understand that the mining industry is open to young entrepreneurs and people who want to come up with creative solutions. I think there's a perception out there that mining companies don't want to do anything different, right? And it can be challenging, but they should consider it an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking mines, more and more mines, they have some innovation department that they're building, continuous improvement department that they are creating, and that's really important for them. And it gets bigger and bigger. But one of my, I would say, advice for the young people out there: make sure you know what a mine is when you get into the mine and you talk to your clients. They have their own language. If you go down the shaft, you're not going down an elevator. If you're in a drift or in a crosscut, open stope, whatever, in a race, you need to have that language going on with the guys, the miners, the engineering team. Not only, you cannot be like straight out of the university and not have any experience in the mining side. So if you're planning on actually have a good innovation for the mines, make sure you have somebody in your team that knows mining. So that's really going to be a big help for you.
Yeah, the subject expertise is critical, right? Even if you're just trying to bring a product from a different industry into the mining industry. But, and you mentioned where you are in Quebec that there's a lot of support for R&D. What's going on up there? What is Quebec doing to support this kind of innovation?
So there's Quebec and also Canada, but there's tons of grants and also loans from the government with no interest. They're giving you also money. They're paying. They got the R&D from the government of Canada, which they pay a certain percentage of your salaries that is considered as R&D of your equipment. And there's lots of also incubators that are for the technology. There's a big help from the government on that part. So if you have the money to develop, probably at the end, what it's going to cost you, let's say $1 million to develop, you actually will be able to receive, if you're doing it good, $600,000 or $500,000 back in your pockets. Of course, they won't give it to you just right in your hand, but it's going to take a year and it's going to come back. And that's how I think it's a good way of making the Canadian mining world shines on the international.
No, I think it's amazing, and it just will, I think, continue to push Canadian companies as the innovators out there because there's the support. I think it's a great initiative on their part. Now, you mentioned also in your other role that you work in the innovation space of a big company as well. You wear two hats. So how are those two hats different? What do you get to do that's a lot of fun in the big company on the innovation side?
Well, you can see how you're as a client, as my future clients or me as a client working on the big company, you see how the technology companies approach you, how the ones that excel or they manage to close a deal, they manage to get in there, how they are working. So that's an important thing. It's super exciting for me to see. Build also the relationship between the clients, their suppliers is also super nice on that part. And I have three big projects, which are LiDAR drones that are getting really popular on the ground. VR, so that's a virtual reality for training with the Oculus Rift, but all the infrastructure behind that. And augmented reality, where the guys now on the field have what they call it RealWear physics. There's tons of old lenses where the guy can see and have a live chat with somebody, and he get points on the screen, and while he's working, he's got support from somebody else. So these are things that's going to change, and they're coming, and they're ready. It's really nice to see how evolving it's going to be.
I agree. It's amazing how fast the technology is advancing in the mine operation. I mean, everything from autonomous vehicles to, like you mentioned, VR and AR. It's so different, I think, than how the general population thinks of mining in their head, right? I think people still think it's men with pickaxes and shovels and dirty faces. How do you think we can talk about that technology more so people understand how high tech we are?
Showcasing, getting the students to know more about mining, there's a big effort from the mining industry and also the government, but I think people don't know what a mine is. So you say, well, have you ever been in a mine? Have you seen a mine? So there's like, yeah, like you said, there's going to be a pickaxe and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs are going down to dig gold and coal and whatever. But in reality, the mines are really big underground. They have big equipment. It also depends on the region where you are living. So if say you're living near mines, I think people are going to be more aware, and other people less aware if they're more far. But the fact is as the electricity of the transport going on, the mines are going to be a really important part of our economy, and people need to be aware of that, and it's crucial to many countries around the world.
So tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing and how companies are using VR and AR down underground.
Underground is a big challenge.
Yeah.
So more and more mines have now implemented Wi-Fi, LTE, and even 5G underground. And this opens so much opportunities when you're underground and you have access to that kind of technology. And the VR, you will be able to train people on the surface before they actually go down in the mine and have better reaction, better understanding, and less downtime with the trainees. And this is also important because lots of mines around the world are in remote places.
Right.
So a lot of people had never been on a mine when they're going on their first trip, on their first flying. But if they had actually had the the VR helmet on their head first, and see, the training and see, okay, well, that's where we're going to go. And after that, they get on site, they're going to be more ready and more open also to progress, and it's going to be more safe for them. So that's important.
So it's mostly from a safety training perspective with VR, you would say, learning the safety protocols and how to react in certain situations.
Yes, I think it's more on the safety side, training also super important. But there's a big gap between virtual reality and augmented reality. And this is two different parts that people need to separate.
Yeah, maybe you can explain how they're different. What's the difference between augmented and virtual reality?
So virtual reality is you have a headset and you put it on your eyes and you don't see in front of you. So you just see what the screen shows you. So you're in the virtual environment. So you're actually, if you're in a room in my office and you put that on and wow, badam, you're in the underground mine, you're in the mill, you're wherever you need to be with the Oculus Rift, the VR headset. But the augmented reality on the other side is glasses that add little components to what you're seeing at the moment. So imagine, such as the HoloLens, you put these glasses on your face and you look around and you could see across the wall and see some piping. So that's the VR, the AR, the augmented reality, would show you the piping that is going through the walls, even if you don't see in the walls without the glasses. So that's the big difference. VR is good at the moment, but the AR, there's still a lot of things to be improved and is not mature yet enough to be fully used in the mines as an augmented reality. They can be used for, let's say, Zoom meetings where you can see the other people and have that on-site conversation with the person with your hands free, where you can work something. But at the moment, there's lots of things that need to be improved in the AR world, but it's going to get there, and there's lots of nice things going on.
And that's the one that really depends on the connectivity inside of the mine, right? Because if you don't have internet connectivity, you can't be operating with augmented reality. Exactly.
So if you don't have that internet, you cannot connect. And one of the other things that is the problem in AR, you need to have anchors. So the lens needs to be anchored to something, so they kind of
knows where it is.
Where you are. But if you're in a dark place, usually the anchors are visual, so it's kind of hard for the AR lenses to really locate where you are. Where there's LiDAR, that could be something new to address, or other type of anchors might be available. But yeah, that's one of the hardest things that's going to be underground is the lighting condition, and that's the big problem.
It reminds me of the AR app that Google has, where you can, on your phone, if you look up an animal in Google and then click the button, you can put that animal, like a lion or tiger or bear, in your living room. But your phone looks for that anchor. It looks for a surface to put the augmented reality animal on before it'll start.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple
That's
example.
exactly how it works. But if you try to do that when your lights are closed in your room, it's not going to work properly.
I never thought of that. That makes a lot of sense. So what other technology do you see coming down the pipeline behind those? What else do you think is going to be the next great innovation?
Of course, the autonomous vehicles, that's for sure. All mines are looking forward to that. There's lots of advancement in Chile with Codelco. They did a good job with that. And, all these Sandvik and Atlas Copco of this world are working hard, and Caterpillars also. That's for sure. That's the easiest one to go for. But one of the things that I see coming is tunneling in hard rocks. So there's different companies, Komatsu, Sandvik, and Atlas Copco. They're working in tunneling for mines, as they could actually, when you're in a drift, you can go faster than blasting each day. So instead of moving, let's say 4 meters a day, you could move 8, 10 meters a day with these tunneling technology. And at the moment, it was not really this tunneling. We're working for coal mines, salt mines, potash mines, as the rock was kind of soft. But the hard rock mines there's not that much interest for that. But I think now the interest is gaining, is ramping up, and lots of mines might be interested in actually going with that technology, starting a ramp with that, as it's going to be faster instead of doing a shaft. It's going to be more expensive. So I think might be a switch there in the future years to come.
And you must be watching other companies to see what they're doing. Are you impressed by anything specific that you see going on in the industry, other than Prospector, of course?
Yeah, there's lots of good. There's two big players, Exxon and MSN. I think they're pushing the underground scanning to another level with the drones. Also, one of the nice thing, but I think it's more flashy than really useful, but we might see it come out, is, you might have heard of it, but it's called Spot. That little dog from Boston Robotics?
Yeah.
That they can jump and, so it can climb onto mock piles. It's been tried out on the ground in different mines, Kidd Creek, in Ontario, maybe also down in the States, Northern Europe, wherever. I think it's getting popular, but the actual ROI onto that are hard to pinpoint. But I think the use case is going to be better as time will come, and people will figure out things with that technology. But I think it's really nice to see that little dog walking around.
Yeah, it's cute at least. Now, I know you work on producing mines, obviously, and that's your focus, are producing and operating mines. But have you started to see any connection more on the tech side between exploration projects and producing projects? I think, there doesn't seem to be much crossover in the tech space between the two.
Of course, if you look at the technology that are used in different companies, there's going to be it's going to look a lot the same, but I think there's a big gap there. And there's a big opportunity there, I think, to fill that gap, because the prospection things are, as a mine engineer graduate, and as working as a mine engineer in production all my young career, I've worked on the ground all the years. You have that separate, there's the geologist, and then there's the production mining crew, and geologists. Well, there's kind of always a war. So even in the production there's a war. Well, if you get that more separation, even more between the prospection and the ongoing project. So there's still a gap to fill there. I don't have the experience to say more about that. I haven't been really much involved with that. But yeah, there's definitely a gap between these two.
I think there's.
I know you're a geologist, and I'm just teasing.
No, yeah, but and that's where I probably, because I'm a geologist, I think the opportunity is on the data side. I mean, we gather so much data during exploration. Certain sets of it are certainly used once you move into development and engineering, but just with different companies that I talk to, because of how much technology has changed, there's a lot of old data that if it's digitized and integrated in with the more modern data sets, can add a lot of value in how you look at a deposit and maybe how you adjust your mine plan or operate your mine. And just capturing data from the beginning now in a way that it can be fully integrated once you bring an asset into production, I think could save companies a lot of time and money. Companies don't always think about that because we, as an industry, start with the prospectors and the juniors, and they're just going to do stuff as cheap as they can, right? So there's not such a big focus on, is this data set going to be something that a mid-tier or a major can use when they acquire us, or that we can use as we grow and turn into a producer? So that's where I kind of think about, cloud-based technologies and the ability to scale, and how do we change how we capture and store and manage data starting at that early stage.
The key point is keeping the data.
Yeah.
So probably by the time you get bought 2 times by a junior, then a medium big company, and then the big company that starts your project, they're going to have different types of software, different types of AI in between these two, and you'll have to transfer your data from one to one. There's no big commune system that only does this. I mean, there's so much companies out there, but the key is to keep that data because it has a value. Even if it's in Excel spreadsheets or big Access database, still not being cloud or SQL, but the main key is keeping the more data as you can. Yeah. Even if it's all messy, the AI usually will be able to do something with that.
Yeah, because even going back to the program I ran in Afghanistan, one of the first things we did was we digitized and translated all of these field reports, technical reports that the Afghan Geological Survey had done with the Soviet Geological Survey back in the 70s. And thankfully, because, Afghan geologists had taken paper copies home with them during the Taliban times to save them from being burned. So you literally had like a single report about all this work that had been done on deposits all around Afghanistan. But at one point, and I don't remember the exact number, but we tried to calculate how much it would cost to replicate all of that work. And it was certainly in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So old data is still worth a lot of money because it would cost you a lot of money to go back and do all of that work again.
Yeah, definitely. And, I had the chance to work in a mine that was built in the 70s. So we saw everything, from the old plants to the newer technology that was there. But, mines have been working for a long time, and they have made profit. They have been able to dig really deep. They have been able to find gold deposits, even with lower technologies that we have today. And that means that the data they were gathering, they were putting on plants and things like that, have actually value because they've been doing that for a while. So it doesn't mean because today we're working with computers that the data before was not good, because it was good. So that data is valuable, like you're saying. And I can't imagine all the work that you saw in Afghanistan being burned or lost. That would have been really, really sad.
Yeah, no, the country owes those Afghan geologists a great debt for protecting those reports. It's important because I always remind people that even though we're using all kinds of amazing technology and we're doing great things, people have been mining for thousands of years, right? I mean, we have to also remember that we're still just trying to break big rocks into small rocks and sort them out, and really value the fact that people were able to figure that out with none of the technology we have. That's what's always amazing to me, is how did somebody look at a green rock somewhere on a face and think, there might be something worth crushing up and grinding to see what's in there. Why is it green? Right? And how do you get from that to copper? It's amazing that people were able to figure that out with none of the technology that we have now.
Yeah,
and those were geologists, not engineers. No.
Yeah, and it's really special to see that back then we were doing it, but today I think the one of the things it's more you can get out more tons at
Sure. Yeah.
maybe lower cost because you're mining at lower grade and the price is higher, but also that is safer. So that's one
Yeah.
of the key points that mines before to today are really safer than they were. Mostly in certain field of mines, I think there are mines around the world that are not safe. That's really bad for the industry, as I see, lots of companies from around the world, small companies, when they mine in foreign regions, smaller companies don't have necessarily the budget and they make a bad publicity for the mines. But if you're a big company in Newmont or any iron gold of this world, and you're getting into a foreign company, a foreign country, well, you're mining, you need to respect what you've done back at home, what you would have done back at home, because it's going to get out there if you're doing something bad and it's not going to be profitable for you. So that's one of the bad, I think, publicities, small mines mining not safely around the world.
No, and I think that's another reason why we as an industry have to focus on the new technology that we're bringing into mines because of that, the reality and the perception of mining being an unsafe place to work. Especially the bigger companies that work internationally, the more we can export technology that keeps people safer, right? That's good for everybody. I mean, it's better, of course, for the people who work in the mines, but it's also better for the industry if people start to understand that we are trying to keep people safe, and that safety is the number one concern.
Yeah, and we're seeing it. I mean, I have some friends in Africa. Their companies just pushing the technology into the mines that they're going around different countries and really helping. And that I think is one of the success key of the old industries. It's making sure that technology is available everywhere around the world, not just in Canada, Australia, or the countries that are more developed, but everywhere that has mines, miners needs to be safe. And above anything, miners needs to be safe.
I would imagine going back to the VR and the AR, that's another advantage is you can have training and standards enforced virtually to a greater degree, or maybe you will be able to. If you have mines in areas where maybe there are concerns about safety, you can have headquarters watching what's going on in real time, monitoring what's going on in real time, and enforcing higher safety standards.
Yeah, of course, definitely. And one of the things that mines are also working on, and that's where we're talking about a lot of data, is making data significant to the headquarters to get a good tracking. Get good reports, make it easy to follow the KPIs, and that thing on all the industry, AI industry and data industry. That's the key point, making it easy to read, have the right KPIs. And even though we're really developed on data science, it's hard to have good KPIs and do something with that data. There's big firms, they're still having trouble getting all these data together, and there's going to be a gain of having these chunks of data together like you do in Prospector. Make it easy for the user to see, not have multiple reports and trying to figure things out. So, like CR, you don't want to go on CR.
Well, especially as the workforce coming up is used to really interactive and easy to use software, right? I mean, I think that's something the industry can focus on that will encourage people to come into the industry and stay in it. People who grew up on the internet, on their iPhones, on their iPads, they're used to being able to look at a dashboard and quickly summarize what's going on. They're used to platforms that are interoperable and where they don't have to be clicking in and out of 12 different Excel sheets and different portals. And really, it's just making it easier to use, so you make it more effective.
Yeah, well, definitely, I think the big change is there. When I was younger, so I'm not that old, but if you compare me to Gen Z, it's a Generation Z. They haven't been like on a computer and clicking on different types of things, even command line, just trying to use command line to do something, you just lost them. Just try to do it needs to be click there, work out of the box.
The UX, the user experience has to be really high. Yeah,
Yeah,
or
just
should be.
like right now, it's gonna switch, or they won't try as hard as we were trying when something was not working, clicking, and
Right.
trying to figure out how it's gonna work. But now everything is easy, so that's a
The
big
expectation is there. No, that's a really good point. And I think going to your note on KPIs, that's also a really interesting point that the industry has a tough time with those, whereas they are more standard in other industries. And I wonder in operating mining companies, is it because each mine also kind of operates as its own little kingdom, for lack of a better word, right? So you have all these kingdoms that then you've got headquarters or an international or national group, but each mine has its own little culture and population. Do you think that has anything to do with why there are challenges there?
yeah, of course. So if you're management and if you're a new CEO of a big mining company, and say, well, every mine's gonna
Yeah,
have the same system. Well, your
good luck.
action is going to go down, and nobody's going to work, and everything's going to crash. So of course
Right.
cannot expect to do that. The mines are really putting big effort on trying to uniformize these tasks and uniformize the different data centers, database software they're using. But the fact is that people have Excel sheets
Yeah.
spread everywhere a little bit, where have their own thing of doing. So it takes time. It's going to happen. I'm pretty sure, but it won't happen overnight. And if you
Right.
want to make it happen overnight, well, your mind's going to stop running for 2 months. That's for sure. So it's going to take patience. And I think big companies for the database side or the software side are there. There's big players. Sometimes they know it's going to take time. They have the time to do that. And that's the key, taking time to start to import that, but the effort needs to be there. And big mining companies are really starting to get into that.
It's an interesting balance where you have to acknowledge the unique requirements of each location, but also have enough standardization where you can implement systemic improvement, right? Systemic evolving innovation, for example. But I think it's also a unique challenge because it's pretty frequent that mines and assets change hands, right? We have a lot in the mining industry. You have a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So one company probably just finishes getting everything set up the way they want it. And then someone else comes in and buys the mine, and the poor mine team has to start all over again with, with a new set of management.
I think that's really. I think that's one of the problems, is that always change hands. At some point, mines will say, "Well, I mean, that really depends on the vision of the mining.
Yeah.
That is there. Are they going to be ready for acquisition? Are they too big to be acquired? Are they too small? They don't want to stay. Well, I think it's gonna change depending on what type of mines. But I'm just thinking about that for the mines. There are operations, but just imagine the government when they're trying to
Yeah.
change a whole system. I'm not surprised that it costs billions of dollars to change that, and that sometimes it fails and just go back to legacy code because they couldn't do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's big to take on. And
Yeah, that's a good point, because then you have governments come in and say, all the mines in my country, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And they may have tens or hundreds of mining companies there that then have to figure out how to implement those changes as well. But well, as we wrap up, how do you see Point Laz playing in all of these new challenges coming up on the industry? Where do you
well,
see yourself and the company focusing?
we just want to focus on the mine shafts, and we have our own environment with our platform and things like that. We don't want to change too much the operation or get too much in the others data, and get connected. We're just going to be standalone, and eventually maybe start to connect with other data. But that's the first step, is getting into the mines, getting known as the way to go for the shaft inspections, as it's going to save money and be safer. And when we can prove that and be recognized, I think the solution is going to be like the cavity monitoring system for the stope that revolutionized the world. But this one is going to have a big impact on the ROI of the mines.
Well, we look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing how everything goes with that, and hope to have you on and, at your next big announcement of how you all are doing. So thanks for coming on the rocks, and cheers to you and your team.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you to our guest and my colleague, Alexandre Grenier, for joining us on this episode of On the Rocks. To learn more about Alexandre and PointLaz, visit pointlaz.com and check them out on LinkedIn. For more about Prospector, go to prospectorportal.com or check us out on Instagram at ProspectorAI and LinkedIn at ProspectorPortal. Thanks for joining us on The Rocks. Until next time, keep your glasses full and your ice cold. Cheers.